when you have that desire it's that strong, it's almost like you can't see.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're blind to everything until you get what you want. And then once you get what you want, then it's like, oh, this wasn't really worth all that. Or it's that guilt that comes over like, Dad, I've literally lost my mind.
Hey y'all, I'm Celia.
And I'm Yolanda, and this is Real Talk Through Biblical Womanhood.
Yes.
Let me tell y'all, we've been gone for a minute, and we did not plan it.
And we back with the jump.
Yeah, we ain't planning it, but you know, with the flu, traveling, like we just were like, dang, we done gone like 2 or 3 weeks without dropping any episodes.
Yes.
So we apologize, but life be lifing.
Yes,
so,
and we missed y'all. During this little break. How have you been handling it?
Tired. I'm really tired. So whenever we get to February, March of our school year, that's when it really goes crazy because it's hiring season and then it's observation season. And with me being out sick for 2 weeks, like my son was sick the first week and I had to take care of him, and then like the second week I was sick. Like it's just, we feel as though we're pushed back. But the good news is that we don't have a lot of people leaving, so it's not like we have to go through, you know, all of these different interviews. So, but it's just like playing catch up. We are doing this. We're trying to get our pre-K program accredited, so I'm over it. It's just been a lot.
Yeah,
it's been a lot.
So in here, I'm gonna tell you, I said this before, but when we take these breaks, I take a break, and I've been feeling that break, and so I definitely miss being here. I felt like, and I think I shared this with you, like, you know, we definitely got to stay in prayer when it comes to the podcast because I feel like the enemy is definitely attacking with regular stuff. You know what I mean? Not just big attacks, but like you said, with the health stuff, I had the flu as well. I was shut down for a week. Just work, just a lot of stuff that is designed to keep us distracted. And I know that it is our goal to make sure we maintain this podcast. But like she said, life be lifing. So sometimes, you know, things will kind of get in the way and prevent us from being able to record as freely. And not to mention that my sister be driving all the way down here for us to do that. So we definitely got to make sure our schedules line up so that we can, you know, make time to do it.
There is something new right now, like something different right now. What looks different to you right now?
I feel like something missing.
So there is something missing. So Celia done went and upgraded us, got us these little mics. It's crystal clear. So you know, she was like, "What? Like, why did I figure it out?" I'm like, "Well, I feel uncomfortable in front of us. Normally, we gotta move to the side."
Hopefully, you guys can now see us. And I'm gonna be honest. I think I was kind of hiding behind the mic. Like I liked it because I'm like, oh, they can't really stick a see me, but they can't see me, and so now you can see me, and so
you can see her. One of the things that we are doing that we are taking on is we are starting a women's Bible study that will start March the 20th. And so we've solicited people from our job, from our church, friend groups, people that we've had Bible study with before. When we get things on a roll, we'll start dropping that link and information in as well. If you want to join as one of the viewers and say, hey, I just want to stop in. It is definitely geared towards women, so we can literally focus on just a word from a female's point of view. There are a lot of things that we are navigating and battling when it comes to the Word of God as women. And when we look at the text, when we look at even the study aspect of it, a lot of times it doesn't come from a female's point of view. And there's things in here, especially when we're talking about these women that we, notice, and then sometimes men don't always notice. But as we told you before, like our pastor is doing a study on the women in the Bible, and like there's things that we're, either he's seeing for the first time or we're illuminated for the first. He was like, yo, I didn't even notice that because 9 times out of 10 when we're reading through the Bible, with the exception of Ruth and Esther and Mary, we kind of skim over
certain stories,
the women of within the stories of the Bible.
And I want to say sometimes our interpretation at the time that we read it maybe a little differently. Like I know I've read a few stories. Initially I'll have one understanding of that story, but then as we go on and I'm able to study it a couple more times, I'm able to get a different perspective of what that story meant.
Right.
She spoke about our women's Bible study. I am excited about that. I know that it's going to definitely be a stretch for us because we work all week, right? And then, we got to get home, get wind down, and then go right into the study. Yeah. But I'm excited about it because I do believe that it's going to be an opportunity for us to partner with other women who are really trying to grow in Christ. Like, the one thing, and this has been our challenge for this season, like, be a sister to a sister, right? The one thing that I have been getting out of all of this that we've been doing this season is more opportunities to grow my relationships with other women.
Yeah.
And so this Bible study is going to give us another opportunity to do that. And I invited some of my family members, some of us that are working on repairing our relationships now. So I know that this will be a good opportunity for God to use to kind of bring us closer together, learning the word together. And one thing that we want to make sure that we promote and put out there is that this Bible study is not about us as the teachers and you guys as the students.
It's like a study group.
It is definitely a study group. That's really what it is.
Yes.
A study group. And so don't feel like when we do, finally put the information out there, don't feel like you don't know enough, you don't have enough to attend. Listen, we all are on different levels, but we're all in this together and we're all willing to help each other, whether it's to understand, have conversation, those type of things. So I am definitely excited about this Bible study. I'm excited that you put so much effort into getting all of the feedback because it wasn't just something that we threw together.
Yeah.
It was, okay, what do the women want to, talk about? What day they want to, talk about this on? And so we definitely put a lot of thought and a lot of dedication into trying to make sure that we are promoting this the correct way.
All of that.
Yeah.
All right. So for this episode, we are talking about women in the Bible who have been abused, misused, in all those series. I feel as though when we think about women feeling lesser than or having some type of apprehensions about reading the Bible is because you do see a lot of harm and a lot of abuse, on women within the Bible. Now, are women the only one that's being abused or, things are happening to? No. But the things that are happening to them, most of them is sexual in nature, if you go ahead and look at all of them. And so, when we think about that, things are happening to women, but when it comes to the sexual violence that's taking place against them, it's a lot. It is a lot, and that's how you see them. And you see this more so in the Old Testament than you do the New Testament. So you'll see that a lot of the women that we're going to be talking about are from the Old Testament because that's where we see the most from. The only time you normally see women being talked about in a negative way in the New Testament, if you hear that they were a prostitute or they had some, they were in an adulterous affair, but you don't really see the harm that we see in the Old Testament. Some of them we would kind of like maybe do like a little deeper dive into it. Some of them we'll just mention and just talk about like just what can we get out of this? Why would God, who inspired the Bible, allow those stories to be put in the Bible?
Amen. So I'm going to tell you, this was definitely a difficult study because, like you said, the sexual abuse that happened to the women, and for me, reading that was just heavy.
Right.
I felt like, so even as I was like finishing up some stuff today, I just was like how you said, we as believers can get so caught up in our minds, like, how could God allow that to happen? Or why would that happen? But the one thing I've been realizing after all these years is that it's a purpose for everything, right? And the story has to be told.
Yeah.
And so I think if nothing else, and I'm going to tell you something, because, I speak about being a victim of sexual abuse and stuff like that. The Bible actually gives me an opportunity to identify myself too. Like, okay, yeah, that did happen to me, but that doesn't have to be the end. Right. And so I think if nothing else, although it's a hard read, that's what I get out of it. And more encouragement, and whether you were the victim of sexual abuse or not, it's in there. And one thing too that this is for years now that I've been struggling with that's in the Bible is pedophilia. Mm-hmm. Like how much, it is in the Bible. And I struggled with that for a while. Like, how could God be okay with...
Right.
Yeah.
And so that was, as I was going through the notes, I think it was Thursday and Friday, I was going through the notes, and I had the same question. I said, I was wrestling with how are we going to put this forth on air about this, because I don't want people to think that we're promoting anything. Right. And I do want people to understand that as human beings, as women, I don't want people to think that we're glossing over it or just saying, but it is. But what it came down to was that all of these stories really point to the cross and why we need Jesus the Christ.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, we are all sinful people. We are all wicked people. Mm-hmm. And that wickedness shows up in people differently.
Yeah.
So for me, it may not be in sexual deviance and whatnot. It may be, I could be a liar, and my lies can jeopardize other people's lives.
Yeah.
It could be that for somebody else that, they are a murderer, and some people, they might steal, and some other people, it might be their pride. So our sin shows up in different way, and it just always just points to why we needed Jesus the Christ, because without him, this wickedness will pretty much enslave us.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that with as much as it's allowed in the Bible, that a man being of age, being with someone who is underage, do you think that the idea of it being wrong came from man? Or do you think that it was still wrong in this time, but God...
Oh, no, God said it in Leviticus. He said it was wrong. Like, I was just reading with the children in children's church. We were talking about adultery and why they need to take that so seriously. Mm-hmm. And so I was going through Leviticus and showing them all of the laws that God had on sex alone. Mm-hmm. It was several verses, and he was breaking it down from the Rudy to the Tootie. Like, this is what I call for sex to be. So let me tell you what sex is not. It's, if you do this, you die. If you do this, you die. Mm-hmm. And like, he just kept naming all of the things that he felt were just, perverted. Like, no, you can't do that. And so it's not that men thought it was wrong. God said it was wrong. And so even if we look at the laws that we in this country have today, most of the laws, if you look at it, come from the Ten Commandments, come from some biblical aspect, even though people don't even realize it.
Right.
Because if that was the case, how would we be able to say what's right and what's wrong? Who was the one who determined that was right or wrong?
Right, absolutely.
And so, I just look at that. And so it was so funny because some of it I had to kind of like skip over it because we had like a couple of kids, like my older kids was just like, dang, ooh, wow. But my younger kids is like, it's just that. And I was like, no, let's not say that one right there. But it's there. He understood the pitfalls of sex and what sex could lead to, and the harm that sex could have, not just on others, but also even on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so when you look at, when he talks about sin, he really goes in on that because of the fact, like, it's harm that you're doing to yourself as well that you don't even realize. So who do you want to start with?
So the first person, so I'm going to tell you, I read a number of them, but I definitely honed in on two particular stories that mattered to me, mainly because of the lack of protection of their fathers, and how the fathers was more so like, let's cover it up. I was like, yes.
So y'all just don't care?
Y'all just don't care. And so those two stories stuck out to me. The first one was in Genesis 34. This is about Dinah and who she was raped. She was Jacob's daughter, right? So it was like, so I'm trying to figure out, because one of them, this one was the one that was influenced by the cousin. This one, she was raped by who? I can't remember.
Shechem.
Right, that's right. The guy from Shechem. So I'm gonna just tell you, the one thing that, because it said that he was burning with lust. I guess looking at her.
Her thing is for both of them.
Yeah.
Because I know you're gonna say that. Okay. That she was burning for lust, and I was like, burning for lust.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Yeah. And so the reason why they stuck out to me is because, one, we do experience stuff like that today, right? Two, it just made me want to tackle the fact that people need to be in control of their sexual urges. The desire that he had to be with this woman caused him to sin, right? And then it goes down the line of how they wanted, what was it about the family?
Put them together. They wanted to get married.
Yes.
Because then the guy wound up becoming like, oh, I'm in love with her now.
That's what it was. He was in love with her.
And I marry her.
So one, let me read the commentary to this story. And please go back and read it because it is a long story. It's the whole chapter.
And that's from Genesis chapter 34.
Yes. Yeah. And so basically he seen this woman, he I guess loved what he seen. He ended up raping her, but after the rape he ended up falling in love with her. And then her father ended up finding out, right?
Yeah.
And her brother, so.
Right.
Because at the end of the story, they ended up killing all of them over there. You know what I'm saying? But the bottom line is
shut them down.
Shut them down. Yes. But the part that I am so focused on is how his desire when he's seen her caused him to sin. And so right here for the commentary, it says Shechem may have been a victim of love at first sight. So love at first sight caused him to cause harm to her. They say, but his actions were impulsive and evil. Not only did he sin against Dinah, he sinned against the entire family. The consequences of his deeds were severe both for his family and for Jacob's. Even Shechem's declared love for Dinah could not excuse the evil he did by raping her. It says, don't allow sexual passion to boil over into evil actions. Passion must be controlled. That right there. And so I have shared on this platform before that I have been raped. I am a victim of being raped in my high school at the age of 15. And I know it was because of somebody else's, desire and lustful thoughts when they see me. But it caused me so much harm.
Right.
And so, but the part that gets me is how her dad was not even willing to really stand up and stand his ground to defend her. It was her brothers that did.
Out of fear.
He was scared. And it's like, yo, and we talked about this early on in the season, not being protected. You know, when we talk about today with women, right? A lot of us feel like we got to protect ourselves because of the lack of protection. And so I honed in on that story first because I'm just like, man, you know, where's her father? And well, he was there, but why couldn't he protect her the way that the brothers set their whole situation up? And part of me felt good that they did that. You know what I mean? Part of me was like, yeah, take them all out. Take them out. And so that was my first one. Then the second one, because like I said, I only had really two, but it was the story of Tamar. And I think I spoke about that story before. She was raped by her half brother.
And you can find that one in 1 Samuel's or
so mine is 2 Samuel.
Sorry, 2 Samuel chapter 13 verses 15 and 16.
Yes. Now this one got to me too because he was influenced by somebody else to do it.
Put a battery in his back.
Yes. And it's like, where's your self-control? Where's, you know, but again, the lack of protection because the father knew. Did nothing,
but that was his son, and so he didn't want
to do nothing. But guess what? The brothers stepped up, and so I'm telling you, the main thing I got a couple things. One, lack of protection from the father. Two, the brothers were willing to protect their sister and get revenge for their sisters, and then three, not allowing lust to boil over or your desires to boil over so much that it caused you to sin. Like even with the brother, he was conniving. He created a whole talking about he was sick, asked the father to have her come in and serve him, and grabbed her and then raped her. And then, oh my gosh, let me tell you, this story broke my heart because it talked about how she tore her garments in shame.
Because it was shameful.
It was shameful.
Because, you know, if you think about this, Joseph had the right.
Well, I got commentary for that too.
Yeah, Joseph had the right to divorce Mary, and he was going to divorce her quietly because she was with child. Which meant that custom said that, and it says it even in Levitical law, if you find that your daughter, if the bride to be is not a virgin before during your betrothal, like you could go ahead and stone her to death. You can go ahead and axe her back. So who's going to marry me?
Right.
Now that I've been defiled.
Right.
Even and nobody's gonna want to hear, oh well, she got raped by her brother.
Right.
Because what happens is that, well, what was she doing?
Right.
Well, that was on her. Well, she shouldn't have been there. She shouldn't have been that. And then it's like now, instead of actually defending and having justice done for her, you now have turned this victim into the villain.
Right.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, and not only that, he felt shame too. The way he responded to her after the act was done represented the shame that he felt within himself. And so it goes back to those things, like even when it came to, you know, certain relationships and stuff that I had, before the act, oh, we in love. I want you, you want me, we are. But after the act, now we hating each other. So is that truly something that should have been done? Is that truly something that was ordained by God? But I had a little bit of commentary that I wanted to read to 2 Samuel 13. So I'm going to start with this one. It say, Amnon was encouraged by his cousin Jonadab. You know his cousin Jonadab to commit sexual sin. We may be more vulnerable to the advice of our relatives because we are close to them. I thought that was good to point out, because how many times do people around us influence us to do things that are not right? However, we must make sure to evaluate every piece of advice by God's standard, even when it comes from a relative. And so I thought it was important to point out, because this brother that raped her could have thought that his actions were okay because a family member told him that it was okay to do it. Right. And it wasn't. The commentary for verses 14 and 15, it says, love and lust are very different. After Amnon raped his half-sister, his love, and again, going back to the first story about how this guy raped, Diana, and he said it was a love at first sight. Okay, after Amnon raped his half-sister, his love turned to hate. Although he had claimed to be in love, he was actually overcome by lust. Love is patient. Lust requires immediate satisfaction. Love is kind. Lust is harsh. Love does not demand its own way. Lust does. And then it says, lust may feel like love at first sight, but when physically expressed, it results in self-disgust and hatred of the other person. If you just can't wait, what you feel is not true love.
It's lust.
Yeah.
And so I think that goes back to love is an action, and not a feeling. Yeah. Because our feelings can betray us. And so we have to kind of like be mindful of that. And when we think about lustful desires or any type of desire literally means that you have to have it right then and there. Yeah. And the feeling is so strong, you can't think of anything else. That should let you know right then and there it's lust. If your body is not allowing you to think about anything else, you know that is lust. Right. And so in both of those situations, we see that there was lust, and then there was love, quote unquote, after that. Right. But it was just like, but even with that, like, was it truly love, or was it the guilt of, I've gone too far? Right.
Because would the love had allowed you to commit the act? And I think that is something so important to focus on, because there's men that watch our podcast. You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, we have family members, we have sons and stuff like that. Does the sexual act equal love? Because to us, it does not. And I know for me, I'm learning that. Like, I did not know that before, because I was groomed to think that the sexual act meant that I was loved. But that's because probably some of the men that I dealt with also thought that. But this right here shows you that act does not represent love. Sometimes it can be harm and danger and lust and those things that can damage a woman. I can only imagine, especially the one that was raped by her half brother, the damage that was created in her by the instruction of their other family member. Right. It's like, yo, you know, I just, at the end of the day, I just feel like love does not equal something that should cause me harm. It may hurt my feelings, because if you love someone, you're not going to agree with everything that they do, but it shouldn't cause my life harm necessarily, is what I'm saying, if you say you love me.
But the thing is, again, this, to me, again, is just illumination of what it means to be a sinful human being, individual. We can look at this and we can look at Amnon and Shechem, and we can unpack and pick them apart. But like, we do things that way where we excuse or we act on impulse or we act on feelings, where people could just say, but you caused me harm. Right. And I think like these stories show us just how powerful our sin natures are and how it drives us to do things that are unthinkable. When I think about the two of them in that type of rape, and then those two men having some type of shame. There are some men that don't have the shame or the guilt afterwards. Right. It's like there is no type of emotion, no remorse, no nothing. This is just who I am, and then they just keep it moving. And as a matter of fact, they will put it back on a female and blame her. Or then you have those guys who will do something like that and then become, what's the word I'm looking for? Possessive. Meaning like, you belong to me. Because I've done this deed, now you belong to me. And so I kind of like even have that feeling with like Shechem of like, once he did that, like then he like, well, then I want that to be mine. Right. And so it's like, but how do I want you to be mine, you know, after that? So, you know, it's just always just that notion of, if her brothers had not gone on that murdering spree, because when we say they murdered that whole entire town. All the boys, they said, they tricked them, but they got all the men of that town. Yeah, all the men. But had they not done that, what would that marriage have looked like? Right after that, would there have been trust? I mean, it's just a lot. People, what I looked at that caught me off guard, and I think I never really paid attention to it until we started doing the study, was Sarah, Leah, and Rebecca, and how they used their maids to get what they wanted. Wow, yeah. Because to me, when I hear maid servant, you know, I hear you need me to help you get dressed. Yeah. You need to help you do the household chores. You need me to help you, you know, with your ins and outs. Yeah. Not you need to help me make some babies for your husband. Yeah. And so, and never did we see in this text, hey Hagar, look, girl, I need you to help me out because my husband, he need a child. It was just go lay with my husband. But then dismiss her when it doesn't fit or suit. Let me tell you, my daughter and I, we've been reading through the Bible together. We in Genesis. And when I tell you my daughter was not feeling Sarah, she was like, whoa, that was your choice though. She was like, yo, I'm not feeling how they did my girl Hagar. Yeah. But I see that with Hagar, I see that with Bilhah, and I see that with Zilpah, with Leah and Rachel. It's like, y'all are women and y'all know what it feels like to have men not take you seriously, but yet you are using these women as, you know, your baby making machine. Right. And I was like, I don't know. I just felt like that to me was like a slap in the face right there. Yeah. But so let me just say this for me and just how I view those situations. Like even with Sarah, do you disagree with the idea that some of how the men made certain things could also create those type of thoughts? And like, all right, for instance, you know, you have some women who in a group of women may be more dominant because she is more so around other men. You get what I mean? And so in my head, the need for Sarah to dominate and tell and dictate and all of that, do you think that she kind of got that from somewhere? Because I don't see her really being in that position to just, not saying like that. I think, so what I'm trying to say is this, being a product of your environment. Maybe Sarah was brought up in a situation where she's seen women do women like that, or okay, this is what you do with your maids. You utilize them any way you can. My thing is, no matter what, wherever it originated from, I feel as though it's a misuse and abuse of women. Period. And so these are the instances where I see it being done by other women. Right. Not by. So I think what I'm trying to get to is I agree with that. Right. It doesn't matter where it originated, but kind of it does, because even if you look at us today, right, as women, and we have women who are supervisors and they got employees, we got women who are sisters in Christ and all of that. A lot of times
when we have issues, right, is because of our personal stuff, but some of that is because of where it originated. So let's say, for instance, if I have a mother who is full of drama, and that's all she's full of drama, If I got a mother who is somebody who like to use people, then I may 9 out of 10 come out being a user. And so I'm saying all that to say this: yes, she's wrong, and it is wrong for the misuse. However, I just believe some stuff are learned behaviors, and if she is put in a position where she has authority like that, what does the authority, the person who's over her, looks like? Because in my mind, you know, if you leave raggedy, you follow raggedy. Right. So if she had this kind of persona or character, her leader, how was he? You get what I'm saying? We don't even know how he was because he was the one who said, pretend to be my sister. Exactly. So, again, that was before this, right? So that's what I'm saying. That will create reasons why she would have made decisions and treated her. That's how I feel. I feel as though it's a little bit of both, because I see that you can be in situations where you can be led by raggedy but still also do better than raggedy. I've seen that. But I'm also looking over here at the situation of what was the motivation. What was the motivation? And in all of these situations here, what was motivation was, I'm trying to dominate this man. I'm trying to get this man's attention. I'm vying for his love. I'm competing with this other female. And so, you know, looking at that, it's just, I look at our motivations for doing things, even just looking at the men and their motivations for why they rape those women. It's like that desire was so overpowering. And so when I see that, I'm just looking at, again, just the sin nature in regards to me before anybody else. I'm thinking about me first. I'm going to think about what can I get out of this? What is best for me, and me. And so to go back to what I'm trying to say, right? We just said her leader, lied and said she was because he was protecting her, the me. And so if the image, because that could have been the example that she got, and so by the time she got the head guard, it's about me because my leader has also shown me that that's how we need to be. And so I'm not giving her no excuses. I'm just saying, whenever, and this is not just with the stories in the Bible, I look at the whole picture. When we're dealing with people and their actions and what they do, even with the guys that raped these women, right? Because of course this is the first time we hear of them and their ex. And I'm sure that there was something prior to that caused that, you know? And so what I'm saying about Sarah is, when it comes to her and how she handled Hagar, let's look at her background. And even when it comes to the people, again, talking about the rape part of it, you know, they say victims become predators. So we don't know if these men were sexually abused or not like that. The Bible don't tell us that. But I just know that for me, anytime I take any actions, anybody's actions, I want to know the whole story, because you didn't just, same thing Rev said, we don't come into the world this way. We come in a clean slate. Sarah came in a clean slate. How did she get that way? And so I'm always just going to bring it back to, yes, we see these things, we see patterns, but it goes down to our sin nature. And that's why I always like ball it back to, because that's me. That's the origination of all of the origination. When we come to Adam and Eve in regards to just because of the sin. And so it's just looking at, you know, that aspect of it. But, you know, these are the stories where I see it the most, where the women threw their maid servants out there to go ahead and bore kids for them so that they can have it. Who I have next? Good old David and Bathsheba. Yes. I agree with that one. That on David and Bathsheba. First of all, David already got a few wives by the time he see Bathsheba. He got I think 2 or 3 at this point in time. He wasn't following directions, because as a king, they were at war. He was supposed to be at war with them, leading them. 2, he wasn't minding his business. That woman was doing her daily thing. And she wasn't out there trying to promote, like, I'm trying to be out here. He was where he wasn't supposed to be. But I'm going to have an affair with her. I'm going to abuse my authority and say, my position, and say, come over here because I'm the king, and she better do what I say because I'm the king. But then when you find out that she's married,
and now you go and try to get her husband killed.
Yes.
Like you taking it, like he was just taking it like to the next level.
Yes.
And it was like in all of that, like not only did you, because to me, in my opinion, that is date rape, as they could say.
Okay.
Because you are telling somebody to do something that is against their will. Like, it's one thing if y'all mutually met and wanted to get together, okay. But I'm married. I cannot say no to the king.
Right.
I gotta go to the king. I gotta go to the king. So like you're having her have sex with you, whether she wants to or not.
Right. So I'm gonna tell you, that's where I struggle, because for me, I would not necessarily call it a rape because she did comply. But like you just said, but he took away her ability to refuse because he's the king.
But then again,
but honestly, hear me out. Hear me out. If it's really supposed to be I stand on business or not, she should have still denied. If she still had, he didn't forcefully, physically rape her. That's what I'm saying. She should have been willing to lose her life
for her husband.
And that's the only place that I say that I can't say, but I get it. Like you said, the authority, the king. This is the king. So how can I turn away the king? But if I'm standing on the king, I gotta turn away the king. I get it. She probably know. But what I'm saying, that's the only thing that I can say. I cannot get. But anything outside of that, it was like it was abuse of power. Him, and not even like a protection, because her husband had no clue.
Right.
He about it again. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But he definitely abused his position. So let's think about that in our times today, where there are people of authority that abuse it. So, if you don't do this, then you ain't gonna do. I remember when I was a teenager, I worked at McDonald's and I had a manager like that wanted to sleep with me, and because he was the manager, it was like, all right, well, either you do this or you want to have, problems at work, or you're gonna be fired. Fire me. Right. You know what I'm saying? But I understand, like back in that day, that couldn't
everybody is not like that. And I do know that, especially like in this era where there were kings, at those point in times, women believe they didn't have a choice.
Right.
And there were some women who were like, I don't care, kill me, I'll take it. Yes. Most women were not like, kill me. They were just like, parents was like, look, the king said he wants you, but I'm engaged to this one. I don't care who you're engaged to. Cut that engagement off. And back then, whenever they got engaged, that was like they were legally married. Yeah. Cut that off.
I'm glad you said that, because I got something I want to read.
Because you gotta go. Yeah. And so for those women, it was like, I'm not verbally complying to you. I'm here, but I don't want this. And so my thing is, every time you're in a situation when you're forced to do something you don't want to do, but you have like no other choice, because it could even be a situation, Celia, where the king will say, okay, you say you gonna die, okay, you can die, but your whole clan going to.
Yep.
And so it's like,
so when you do you sacrifice your whole family, or you just commit the act?
Right.
I agree.
And so when that's how King abused the authority back then. And it was just like, if you don't, and that's why people were just like, I got to comply with the king, because me telling the king, no, it's not even just about my life, it's about my entire life. But I just look at that situation, it's like, I'm put in a situation now where, one, I got to lay down with the king, and now I'm pregnant with the king's child.
So I wanted to get into that, because no matter what we're talking about today, the one thing that is the bottom line is that there were consequences for those actions. No matter who everybody that misused or abused God's people suffered a consequence, because even David did. Yeah. You know,
and he had to eat that.
He had to eat it, and he was hurt. And that's the thing, like, they don't think about the consequences at the time of the act. Even with Shechem and the guy, the cousin and the brother. All of them, I ain't got all the names right now, but the bottom line is there were consequences for those actions. So even when you allow your lust and all that to boil over, guess what? Something coming behind that. But I do want to read something, right? Because when I was doing the study about the rape to Tamar, this came up, and it talked about how God detests rape, right? He can't stand it. But it's in Deuteronomy 22. Let me see. Deuteronomy 22, verse 28 through 29. They say, if a man is caught in the act of raping a young woman who is not engaged, he must pay 50 pieces of silver to her father. Then he must marry the young woman because he violated her, and he will never be allowed to divorce her. And so I just want to read that because you just said about the commitment and now he's married to her. Yep. And so back in that day, if you raped somebody, that was your wife. Yeah, you were stuck with her, and it wasn't. So going back to with the brother who raped his half sister, and she felt shameful. How can her brother now take her on as a wife? He can't.
That's my half sister,
right? Yeah, and that's probably why he felt shameful too, because it's like it's done. Like it's wrong. That guilt, even right here, it says like if a man is caught in the act of raping a young woman who is not engaged, well, I missed it. But the bottom line is, God can't stand it. It's not a good thing. Like, you are stuck with her now.
One of the things that I'm thinking about is that most people who do have what we call is that conscience, but I feel as though like be able to hear from God, from the Holy Spirit, when you have that desire it's that strong, it's almost like you can't see. It's like you're blind to everything until you get what you want. And then once you get what you want, then it's like, oh, this wasn't really worth all that. Or it's that guilt that comes over like, Dad, I literally lost my mind. Yep. And so you have one or the other. That's either you're going to be disgusted by it, it's not that big of it, that's not what I wanted. Right. Or it's like that guilt of, how did I let myself get this out of control? Yeah. And so that's how we just got to be mindful. So we have two other situations. One, when Lot offered up his daughters, when the Sodom and Gomorrah was about to be destroyed, and those angels came to him and was like telling Lot was like, look, y'all come me to my house because it's a bit rough out here. And the men were banging on the door and saying, send them 2 men out here so we can have our way.
So the men though, the men was like,
I remember that with the men that you sent. I was like, I remember that. Oh, y'all was really just out here wilding. And then Lot was like, look, don't touch these men. They guess. But you can have my daughters. Yes. Go have my daughters and do what you want with them. Yeah. It's like, so just throw the daughters out there? Right. Like that? But then there's another story that is even more vile, because it was this Levite who, and this is in Judges chapter 19 through 21. And I think we talked about this in that episode before. But he went somewhere, got a concubine. She wound up cheating on him, going back to her dad. And so he wound up getting himself together, going to go get her back, stayed with her dad a couple of days, and then on his way back, they stopped at a village. While they were there, the same type of situation happened, where the men come and they was like, we want to have our way. Right. And the guy who is like hosting them, he was like, let's not do that. Like, come on now. So then the Levite comes out, he's like, don't do that. So he was like, look, take my wife, have your way with her. And I was like, so y'all just throwing these women out here like that, so they don't do nothing to you, right? So that's Lot, that's this Levite. But the difference with this Levite, once they were done with the concubine, and it was bad. By the time she got back to him, she wound up dying. And so what he did was, because to say like what y'all did was like wrong, like this is how y'all do in this land, he went and tore like her limbs off and then sent them to the different tribes to say, yeah, this is what it's like when you come to this area here, and it's called the Benjamite War. I was just like, okay, wow. He offered her to the crowd, right? He offered her to the crowd, told them to do and have their way with her however long they want. She gets raped, mutilated, all of that stuff, comes back to you, dies, and then you cut her body, you dismember her and send her. I was just like, so just no regard for human life whatsoever. And that's how I see it. Yeah. It's not even whether it's a man or woman. It's just no regard for human life.
That's sad, though.
It is very sad. So I remember reading that story, and I was just like, that is morbid. That is like so, like, I never even paid attention to the situation with Lot's daughters, but that one stood out to me. And then when I saw it happen with Lot's daughter, I was like, they just don't care. Just hand them out to these men.
I was going to say, just to hand your daughters and your lives over, man, that's just sad.
Because when you have a man that is that lustful for any type of sexual desire that they want to do with a man, that often a woman doesn't really appease their appetite, right? You know that they're about to be foul. Yeah. it's about to be very foul. And so like I can only imagine like what was done to her. And so I was just like that story always just stood out to me because I was like, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I think my last one, and she wasn't defiled, but it was one of those things where she wasn't respected, and that's the other Tamar. And the other Tamar was married to one of Judah's sons. Mm-hmm. That son died, and so Levite law is if your son dies, he doesn't have any kids, she has to marry the brother, and then that brother, that first child basically carries on his brother's name. Mm-hmm. Well, that brother was like, no, I don't want to. And like they said that the Lord was like, yeah, that brother was already evil. And what he was doing was whenever he would go ahead and have sex with her, he would like pull out and not a lot. I was just like, oh, so that's what you're doing. And God killed him. Mm-hmm. Next brother, he killed that brother as well. Right. And so the only one that was left was the little brother. And so Judah was like, I'm gonna wait for him to get older. And when he get older, I'm gonna go ahead and marry him to you. Mm-hmm. And that brother got older, and he was like, I'm not doing that, because he was fearful that that son was gonna die as well. Right. And so she was just sitting out there like, so what am I supposed to do? Because right now I'm a widow. Like I can't make any money for myself. What am I doing in this household right now? Because I ain't got no husband. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you want me to do? And Judah just kind of like ignored her. So she wound up dressing up as a prostitute and having sex with him. Yeah. And got pregnant by him. Get what she wanted. And that's a point too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because he had to come back because he was like, oh, she pregnant? Go to stone her. Yeah. So she was like, okay. She was like, stone me as soon as you find the one who this belongs to. And he was like, right. That mine. But it was just like, why do her that way when you know that honestly she doesn't have a place in society right now? Yeah. And are you taking care of her? It must have been a point where she didn't feel as though she had the protection. Yeah. So she had to go out and find her own protection. Yes. And so I first of all, I love that story because she, not necessarily how she went about it, right? Because it was wrong, but I love that she stood up for herself. And, you know, as women, sometimes we can be dismissed. Mm-hmm. You know, people will assume that we don't have enough or have the strength or can't do this and can't do this. So you feel like you got to make your own way, you know, but she made her way. And it saved her life. You know what I mean? So not only did it save her life, but she ended up getting the heir, right? Yeah, so her son Perez is one of the line of Jesus. Okay. Yeah. So she did what she had to do. Mm-hmm. And it was a purpose behind it. Right, it's the providence of God. So even in our sinful nature, even in all of our ill-got plans, even when we out here doing what we're not supposed to be doing, the line of Judah carried on. Amen. Because honestly, he didn't have any more sons, right, to have those kids. So it came directly from Judah. Mm-hmm. Because the other, three of them out of the four didn't produce anything. You know, they couldn't carry on the line that led to the birth of Jesus Christ. Amen. So our story about Hagar and Sarah came from Genesis chapter 6, verse 2. Leah and Rachel's story, that was Genesis chapter 30. Bathsheba was 2 Samuel 11. Dinah was Genesis 34, 1 through 26. Tamar with Ammon was 2 Samuel 13, 15 to 16. The Levite's wife is Judges 19 to 21. Lot's offering his daughter is Genesis 19, verses 30 to 38. And then Tamar with Judah is Genesis chapter 38. Go check out these stories and just understand, one, the providence of God, two, the how wicked and sinful we are as human beings, and then why we need Jesus. And just look at it. Every time you look at it, like, Lord, we need Jesus. We need Jesus because we could sit here and just analyze these people in the Word, but we have some of these people in us. Like we've done things. So just to make it seem as though they are wicked people, no, we're wicked people as well. And there are things that we could probably identify in their story with things that we've done in our past. Yeah. And I'm not saying that we're out here raping people, but even like you said, the misuse of people. Yeah, how we treat people, how we use people. We are all image bearers, so we should all be treating each other how we would treat God himself, because we are made in his image. And so that's just kind of the thing that we should put off on. But yeah, there was some stuff that was going down.
Yeah. I am just so grateful for this study right now, because it definitely made me dive into, and like you said, how we can treat people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I do want to make sure that I mention our challenge for the season. You guys should be making sure you're being a sister to a sister. I did find, and I was sharing this to Yolanda, like how God, since we've made that the challenge this season, have been giving me an opportunity to do that a lot. Like whether it's at work, just little encounters at the supermarket, phone calls, just overall being there for my sisters. And so I'm just going to challenge you guys, please reach out to a sister. Pray for a sister or with a sister, study with a sister, please. We need each other in this walk. It's not easy. So make sure you reach out to somebody.
We love y'all.
Bye.